All right, get going in 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast Draft Day Edition. Hope you guys had a great Thursday evening. I am joined, as always, by the wonderful, the one, the only, Dwayne The Rock McFarlane. Dwayne, what a Thursday, man. 2 blockbuster trades. Maybe not blockbuster, but 2 fantasy-altering trades in the wide receiver.
Those are big trades.
They're big trades.
Man,
6 wide receivers went. We got a quarterback. It was a great day.
And just pedal to the metal on making picks. This is my first year to be full time at PFF covering a draft, and wow, I got thrown right into the fire, Ian. It was awesome though, but trying to keep up with it all out, we're instant messaging each other, who's got which trade? I don't know, somebody's got it.
We were moving, we made it work, and now we get to respond to it, Dwayne. We have spent the better part of the last 3 months theorizing, prophesizing, wherever the hell you want to say, Ising, about where these guys are going to go. Now we finally know. So let's kick things off with 2 trades. I will say this, Dwayne. I was having a much better Thursday until the Titans had to go and trade one of my favorite players in the league, obviously one of the best wide receivers in the league, A.J. Brown, to the Philadelphia Eagles. My God, we knew the guy was on the trade block. We'd heard the rumors. I'd done a couple, just stupid mock fantasy trades, wondering where he could go, Cowboys or this or that. The Eagles are objectively one of the worst spots he could go, Dwayne. If you look at their run play rate last year, after they basically gave up on Jalen Hurts as a passer, which was in week 8 against the Detroit Lions, they got in a win streak, running the hell out of the ball. It worked. They made the playoffs. Good for you, Nick Sirianni. But before that, 5th in pass play rate. After that, 32nd. We already have Devonta Smith there. We already have Dallas Goedert there. I truly believe A.J. Brown's a top 10 wide receiver talent in the NFL, Dwayne. But how much can he do when, seriously, 110 targets might be hard to come by?
Yeah, no, I'm still going to be way higher on AJB. I mean, everything you just said was right. I mean, trailing by 4 or more points, the Eagles threw the ball 14. They ran the ball 14% more than the league average when they were within 3 points. They ran the ball 10% more than the league average when they were leading by 4 or more points. They ran the ball 16% more than the NFL average. Not just saying 2 or 3%, way above. But Jalen Hurts did take a step forward last year as a passer. I mean, he made a jump, as far as his, adjusted completion percentage, 65%, jumped up to 74%. They do have 3 good receiving weapons. So, I'm wondering if, Ian, we don't see something more in the middle. I don't think we'll see the pass-heavy offense that we saw early last season. But, I mean, that was what Nick Sirianni really did want to run. He actually wanted to be more pass-heavy. They didn't work out. They had to revert to the run. I'm thinking the offense is going to land somewhere in the middle this year. I'm still going to, project them as, conservatively. But here's the thing. A.J. Brown, man, he's just proven he's way better than Devonta Smith. I like Smith, but A.J. Brown's a much more rugged player. They're going to use him on play action, which, they set up really well. Work him in behind the linebackers, work those in-breaking routes, get him into the space off of those sort of things. So I think A.J. Brown will clearly lead this team.
Your mind almost made you say A.J. Green there, and that's a bad sign, Dwayne. He's not a top 10. He's not a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. That's the problem.
I'm going to grade him as a low-end wide receiver 1. Watch me.
Still?
Yeah.
Well,
dude, he's that good, man. He's just too good, Ian. He's too good. He's way better than the other guys that are there. I mean, just looking at what he's already done, in his career, his yards per route run, his targets per route run. I mean, everything about him screams absolute superstar. So
A.J. Brown or Deebo Samuel if he stays in San Francisco?
Deebo.
A.J. Brown or CeeDee Lamb?
I'll go CD, but that's where it gets close for me.
What about Keenan Allen?
I'll go A.J. Brown. I don't mind mixing in Keenan Allen, but I'm going to buy into the younger talent.
We have that much faith in Hurts. We all saw, everyone in the comments, everyone watching on YouTube and Twitter right now, they saw that performance against the Buccaneers, Dwayne. It was not pretty. And I will say this, I tuned in to the lovely PFF draft show. You guys should check it out. I'm assuming that the ESPN show was telling us, the worst thing that ever happened to all these guys as soon as they were drafted. And in the Hardest household, we did not have the ESPN broadcast on. Positive vibes were being spread around. But the one thing Collinsworth said after this trade happened, because everyone was like, oh, look, they're going all in on Jalen Hurts. This is great, getting him some more weapons. And it is great for Jalen Hurts. It's definitely good for his fantasy real life value and all that. Collinsworth's point was Hurts might be only getting the 2022 tryout. After that, who knows who they're going to bring in. Last 2 Super Bowl champions only had their quarterback for that first season. So man, just so no change to you, Dwayne, going from Ryan Tannehill to Jalen Hurts.
Look,
I guess, hold on. I will say, let me finish my thought. I will say he was already in one of the most run first offenses in the league. So that part of it, maybe I'm overstating, but Tannehill to Hurts, that's a downgrade.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a slight downgrade. Look, I like Tannehill, but I mean, Jalen Hurts, like his accuracy wasn't terrible last year. I already talked about the adjusted completion, percentage. I mean, Devonta Smith was a rookie. Like, is it all on Jalen Hurts? Like, I mean, it's not like the receivers were really that great. So when I just look at the 2.49 yards per route run, 2.65 yards per route run, 2.67 yards per route run for AJ Brown over his first 3 seasons, man, I hope everybody lets AJ Brown start sliding down the board. Okay. I would love to get AJ Brown like in the 3rd round of a fantasy draft this summer. Look, there's just certain players like, it's just hard to not go ahead and bet on the talent. And you came to the right spot, which is he already played in one of the most run heavy offenses. This one's only slightly more. And look, you can't project them to be that heavy in the run. Like most teams that are that heavy the next year, guess what? They regress more towards, they can still be run heavy, but not as run heavy as what the Eagles were last year. So I think that you're going to see the Eagles team throw the ball similarly, to what we saw with the Titans. I do agree he has slightly more target competition. I do agree he takes a slight downgrade, in quarterback, but like he's still a very talented player. I think like thinking anything like in the wide receiver 3 range is crazy. Like if you want to move him into like mid-range wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 2, I think that's fine. Like, I think that's a good conversation. It's not like, I just have to have an absolute stake in the ground on AJB as still being a wide receiver 1. But I think going to wide receiver 3 is too far.
Certainly more so maybe in that mix of guys like Mike Evans, T. Higgins, Terry McLaurin versus the versus the Debos, CD Lambs, even Tyreek Hills of the world. But ballers are going to ball regardless of circumstances.
It definitely makes me want to mix it up more. Ian.
Yeah.
Like, before I would, very happy getting as quickly as I could to like a 20-25% exposure on AJ Brown. Now I'm definitely going to be mixing all of those guys. So, I mean, to sit here and say that it doesn't like change my confidence in him no, I'm not saying that. It does some, but I think overall the situation is still pretty close to what it was.
Devonta Smith, someone that Dwayne, I believe we both had in the wide receiver 3 range before this happened. Are we changing much? Dropping a little bit? AJB is going to be a number 1 there. Dallas Goedert's not going anywhere. I do think bringing AJB increases the pass game volume of the offense, but my God, it's not going to be enough like where Devonta is getting more targets at this point.
What I worry about with Devonta is the way he wins in the separation game with the route running. It's very timing oriented. Like, and that's the thing we haven't seen yet from Jalen Hurts. Like, dropping back, popping, getting the pass out right on time, having the accuracy. He's more of a see it, read it, throw it kind of guy, which I think plays into a rugged player like AJB. Like it plays into what he can do well. A little worried about Devonta Smith. I mean, Devonta was still good. Like if we look at his PFF rookie receiving grade, it was good. He had his targets per route run right at 20%. So, I mean, there were really good things about him as a rookie. Like, so it's not like a player we want to immediately fade. But this does make me downgrade Devonta more than does AJB, just because we've seen, again, the 29% targets per route run. Like AJB, like he can be a 30% target share guy. And that definitely puts a damper, on the other weapons in the offense.
Devonta Smith or Chase Claypool redraft?
I still lean to Devonta, but like it's gotten closer. Like I bet you Devonta falls around to 2 rounds on this news. I don't think AJB will fall as far.
Devonta Smith or Michael Gallup, and we know his knee's fine.
And we know what?
The knee is fine. Yeah.
I still take Devonta Smith.
Okay. So a little bit of a downgrade for Devonta, but hey, if this does seem to indicate we're going to get a more pass-heavy offense. How could you not trade for A.J. Brown, throw the ball a little more? So maybe it is going to be a net positive for both guys. But yeah, Dwayne, biggest point that we talked through there that I'm happy, got it out of the system there, not going to make the mistake of holding that Eagles run-heavy offense against him because he just came from sharing the field with freaking Derrick Henry. Let's talk about the other big trade now. Ravens went ahead and shipped Marquise Brown to the Arizona Cardinals. Apparently, the artist known as Hollywood requested a trade. Will now be back together with former Oklahoma teammate Kyler Murray. So last season, we'll get to Hollywood in a second, Dwayne. Let's face it, the big winner here is Rashad Bateman. All of you Bateman dynasty truthers out there, everyone that said he was going to be the wide receiver 1 last year, regardless, Dwayne and I, weren't down on Bateman, but I think we tried to recognize the fact that Hollywood during his NFL career has shown the ability to be an upside wide receiver too in fantasy land. And he had one hell of a first 8 games last year before the Lamar Jackson injury just kind of spiraled his big play threat. So we have Hollywood out of the picture now, though. Dwayne, changes everything. How high is too high to rank Bateman? Because at first glance, man, he absolutely needs to be at worst in that upside wide receiver tier with guys like Darnell Mooney and Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, I mean that's where he's going to be. Like right now he's sitting outside of it, like a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5. Now he's going to be in the upside wide receiver 3 range. He's going to climb a lot. Like right now, he's another one that we had been talking about drafting, because guess what happens now? The trade helped, but the young receivers tend to move up. He had been going around 10 and 11 in ADP, over the last couple of weeks in best ball over at FFPC. Now, you're probably going to see him sneak up into around like 7 territory. So, and I think that's fine. I mean, it might even get a little bit higher than that. I do wonder, the Ravens now, they've really got 2 passing game weapons, not 3. I think we could see the Ravens run the ball a little bit more. That could be what they're telling us here. They did
getting their running backs back. I mean, it'd be a good time to. I mean, that really could.
Backs.
Dwayne, like I know we talked about the pass play rate increasing last year. I think Lamar, being his 4th year with the team and just taking steps forward as a passer was a reason why. But losing freaking J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, like we saw how rough that was for stretches with Latavius Murray. I mean, shout out Devonta Freeman. He did some okay things down the stretch there, but that could the core of the Ravens, man, might just be run the piss out of the ball, and this seems to be as good of any indication that we could have gotten.
Yeah, and the Ravens go D with Hamilton, at safety with their first pick, and then they come back with Tyler Linderbaum, center, pick 25. So, I will probably end up adjusting the Ravens' expected pass rate down slightly, not a bunch, probably like a percentage point or 2. And I think it'll still be fine for Bateman, right? Because now you just really have 2 guys. You don't have to worry about, feeding 3 players. So even if the offense is a little bit more run heavy than what it was last year, I don't think they'll revert all the way back to their 2019, which was like one of the most run heavy teams in the league, actually probably the most run heavy team in the league those years. I don't think they'll quite get to there, but I do think this, draws back a little bit. But again, like Bateman doesn't have to worry about Hollywood anymore. So, I mean, if he's gonna do it, like it's going to happen.
Bateman or Mike Williams? It's a good one.
I think, I'm going to want exposure to both of those players. You're asking some really good ones, but that's to hear me even pause there. Like that's the range Bateman's going to probably be going in.
How about Bateman or Amari Cooper?
I'm going to go Bateman.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking the same thing, man. I'm seeing
we love Amari. Like we talk up Amari, but his game is really kind of one-dimensional. He's really good at his one thing. He's a great route runner. He really gets open, but he just doesn't have the rack and the other things that he used to have. And maybe he'll have a bounce back year, but he's getting, despite the fact that he's still only 22, he's been in the league a while now. So it's taken a little bit of a toll, I think, on Amari, and we just have questions about what the quarterback situation is going to look like there early in the year. So that would make me lean to a guy like Bateman. But I think you're nailing it. Like that's right around where we're going to be thinking about Bateman. And the unknown, you get drawn to the unknown because like even with Mike Williams, for the most part, like his whole career, we've seen what he is, but we saw that early flash last year that made us think, oh, maybe we don't know what he is. Maybe he could really be more. But like with Bateman, like it's a completely clean slate. Like he could still be a 25-30% target share guy. We know that Amari Cooper's not.
Very fair. I have my ranks sharing on the screen for you YouTubers out there. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always. These are from earlier in April, so not 100% updated. Obviously not updated with all the stuff going on today. But yeah, Dwayne, at first glance, I mean, that wide receiver 21, 22 area, behind the Deontay Johnson, Chris Godwin, kind of that tier, I could see Bateman slipping in there. It'd be a tier with a handful of guys, Mike Williams. I think Cooper's very close as well. But yeah, certainly, very much on the rise for Bateman and everyone that was, reaching on the guy with some rookie picks last year, obviously feeling great about doing that. Now, let's talk about the Cardinals and the other side of things. Now, great news for Kyler Murray, similar to Jalen Hurts. You add a good wide receiver into your offense, it's good for the quarterback. Just shocking, hardcore analysis you're getting here from PFF people. But the one thing with the Cardinals, adding Hollywood to this, man, I'm pissed as someone, Dwayne, you've been right here with me. We've been screaming to the roofs and the souls on them about Rondale Moore and his potential to be a number 2 pass game option here. That seems to be out the window. Not saying he can't start, but once again, we're going to have to look at Cliff Kingsbury and ask, are you going to pick AJ Green or Rondale Moore? Because Hollywood Brown, I think he could play either, man. And we've seen it in this offense. The receivers don't move around. We know Ertz is going to be out there. They got 34 million reasons, I believe, to keep him out there. Hopkins is going to be there. And they re-signed AJ Green and Antoine Wesley. So, Dwayne, the question is, we know Hopkins is there. Is Hollywood going to take over for AJ or Rondale Moore? I really hope it's on the outside for AJ. I think that adds a missing piece to the offense. But then even if we get what we want, which is Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore, and 3 wide receiver sets, we still got Ertz. I mean, it's a crowded passing game. And one of the things I have up here on the screen, like Kyler last year, this is why Hopkins wasn't balling out in the first part of the year like we all expected him to. Target leaders, weeks 1 through 7, Hopkins 44, Christian Kirk 36, AJ Green 35, Chase Edmonds 32, Rondale Moore 31. Their top 5 targets were all within 14 targets of each other. Like with all this going on, Dwayne, it's going to be tough to reach on any of these guys if they're going to be going in that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range.
Yeah, especially if, the Cardinals aren't going to go ahead and just we keep waiting for them to just really say, look, we're going to drop back and throw the ball all the time. They don't. They really are more conservative when it comes back to how often they drop back. They're not like, Ravens, 2 years ago conservative. They're not Eagles conservative, but, they're right there borderline. Like their drop back rate, is right around 60%, which is really conservative. Like if we knew Kyler was going to be, in the 65, 68% range, up there like what we get to see from Mahomes and some of the other guys, we'd feel better about it. But because we know that it's going to be a little more conservative, and we know now you're going to split that up across all these guys. Yeah, I think it hurts, everyone. I am excited for Hollywood. I think he basically stays neutral. Like he was already in the same situation. He was in an offense where you got to spread it around across 3 players that, was pretty, balanced by league standards today, right? Even though the Ravens threw the ball more last year. So I think for Hollywood, it's neutral. I think it's probably a slight downgrade for DeAndre Hopkins for me. Like it's not going to knock him way down the board, but it's tough to see a path right now.
I'm less inclined to pick him ahead of the guys like in that same tier now.
Yeah. So, and then I think, Ertz, we weren't really expecting a ton from. Like we were thinking 18, 20% targets. He's probably still going to be safe in that range. But the big question mark really is Rondale Moore. And I can't answer the question. I wish that I could. Hollywood does get to go back and play with Kyler Murray. They played together in college at Oklahoma. So, that could be a potential plus for Hollywood. But, Hollywood, there is a chance like he kind of slots into that Kirk role, right? Where, he's really more the downfield guy.
It wouldn't be the first time we saw Rondale hit the bench. Like it happened.
Yeah.
I'm mad it happened still, but it happened.
Yeah, it could happen. Like, so the good news is Rondale Moore's ADP hadn't already got out of hand. Like he was a round 10 pick. This will probably push him down to around 12. You'll probably get a 1 to 2 round discount. So you're still going to be able to go ahead and get your exposure to Rondale Moore. The problem is it's like his ceiling is going to have to come through other things we can't control. Like all of a sudden Hollywood misses games. You get – I don't think AJ Green missing time matters. I think that's him and Wesley are sharing that outside role. Like
that's what
for whatever reason. I know. Kingsbury, that's what it's like, hey, I got to have this kind of this is the type of player I want playing this role, which is concerning. So Rondale Moore, his problem is like he just doesn't have a lot of outs because it's like he has to play the slot role. If he doesn't, like he's screwed. Like Hollywood can kind of move all over the formation. We know DeAndre Hopkins is going to be out there a lot. So
just one thing, Dwayne.
For Kyler, dude, it is huge. Huge for
great.
Kyler. Like Kyler, like I was already higher than pretty much everyone on him. I had him in the top tier with Josh Allen. I don't like this because he still would have been great, but now his ADP is going to go up. Man, he was going in the 6th round.
I know.
It's not.
We got him once. I think we got him once. But the one thing you were really trying to hammer home in our pre-draft best ball drafts was just the fact that someone like Rondale Moore, where we could envision scenarios what would happen if the Cardinals used high draft capital on a wide receiver or traded for someone, and we knew that if they didn't, Rondale's Moore stock it was going to skyrocket because he was being priced closer to his floor. Now imagine if the Bills had traded for Marquise Brown tonight, and like how that would have impacted Gabriel Davis. He'd be going down to exactly like where Rondale Moore is right now. So the fact that we did get some Rondale didn't really hurt us. I'm not going to be as actively going after him now at that same spot, but not exactly, tanking the old lineup. But Dwayne, good trade talks. Had to get through that. let's talk some freaking draft now. This actually, stuff that happened, players that now have their employers for the foreseeable future. And the wide receiver one happens to be none other than Drake London to the Atlanta Falcons, pick number 8. As someone that had a little bit of money on the Falcons, plus odds taking an edge or defensive lineman first, I was a little bit bummed. But you know what? We got Drake London in as good of a spot as you could have asked for target competition in terms of available wide receiver targets. So 2021 total, subtracting the amount of guys that have left that team. If you look at London, man, 3rd highest amount of wide receiver available targets. Only the Chiefs and the Packers had more ready vacated targets just to be had. I mean, the wide receiver room before today, Auden Tate, who I love and I maintain is a great receiver, but let's face it, probably shouldn't be your wide receiver one in the year 2022. Auden Tate, Olamide Zaccheaus, and Damiere Byrd was this team's starting 3 wide receivers. Kyle Pitts usually is hanging out in the slot or out wide anyone. I've talked about that at length more than a few times. But now Drake London, at worst, the number 2 pass game option in this offense. Dwayne, the question is, how much is a 1 or a 2 in an offense led by Marcus Mariota really worth in fantasy land? Looking at what A.J. Brown and Corey Davis were able to do in stretches, really only occurred with Ryan Tannehill under center. What do we think about Drake London despite having all these available targets?
Yeah, I think it's still tough, though, to think of him as not being a borderline low end like wide receiver 3. I think you still have to consider him right in that range because, everything's going to really have to go to London and Pitts. They'll get some of Cordell Patterson involved as well. But, it's the target volume is going to be there. Like, what's not probably going to be there right out of the gate is like big upside off of that target volume because you're going to be dealing with, Marcus Mariota at quarterback. They're going to want to try to run the ball more if they can, but the Falcons are probably going to be in so many trailing scripts. It's not going to matter. They're just going to have to drop back and throw the ball more. So with London, I like to think of it, it's almost like you're going to be getting kind of like a potentially, even though he doesn't play slot, but production similar like what you might think, from Jarvis Landry in a good year, right? Lots of targets. You're probably going to get quite a few catches, but are you going to get a lot of touchdowns? Probably not. Like you might get 3 or 4, that might kind of be like what we're hoping for, but he could still haul in 80 receptions, 90 receptions and get 1,000 yards. Like, I think that's within his range of outcomes. You're just the ceiling is not there with Mariota.
Drake London or Adam Thielen?
I'm going to go Thielen.
I agree. Drake London or Gabriel Davis?
I'm going London over Davis.
If the Bills don't do anything else,
you can make the argument for the ceiling on Davis. Yeah. Like you can make the opposite. It's close, man.
That's about right. That's about the area though. Drake London or Juju Smith-Schuster?
Oh man, I don't like Juju.
I would go Drake too. Just say it. Speak it into existence.
I would go Drake London.
Drake London or Devonta Smith?
Probably still go. I'd go Drake London.
Okay. Low end wide receiver 3 has the upside for more. Maybe he is going to go out there just mossing kids, looking like the number 1 wide receiver that he was drafted to be. But I think that low end wide receiver 3 range is about where he is going to fall. Dwayne, immediately
you gotta love him, man. Pick 8.
Does it change your dynasty ranks? I believe you had him wide receiver 4. Again, it's a tier. He was in the tier 1, obviously, but
the Capitol's gonna. And I don't have the actual model open. I just have what I was submitting like this for the. But we'll have it up. We'll have it up on Sunday. We'll have it in the actual.
They all went within 4 picks of each other, though. Like, is it? I understand, there might be certain thresholds, but is it really that big of a difference?
Well, it's not just that. It's more about London. Before the draft, I had him at pick 16, so he moved up more than the other guys.
That's fair. Fair.
I'll have to look. It was really close anyway. They were all. There was a reason, I just said, look, it's tier 1, because they were all so close, based on all of the inputs. So,
are we going Drake London redraft rookie wide receiver 1 ahead of these guys? I mean, if we think the talent is close, he seems to have the easiest avenue to targets. And let's face it, no, we're not thrilled. Marcus Mariota's
quarterback challenges.
Yeah, exactly. None of the quarterbacks are great with, I would say, some due respect to Ryan Tannehill out of these guys.
Tannehill, absolutely. I think
even Jameson too. Shout out Jameson.
I honestly look, we're processing this all live, but I want to say I like Treylon Burks the most out of all these.
Ooh, wow.
For this year, for a redraft. Yeah, you get Ryan Tannehill. We talked about Treylon so many times, and we talked about what's he good at. He's good at in-breaking routes, slants, crossing routes, get him into space, get the ball on him. Tannehill is an accurate quarterback. Let him run after the catch. We talked about, like, don't probably want to have him go somewhere where he's like having to run go routes and do all this stuff all the time. And it was all about, could he land in a scheme that could really do that for him? Well, A.J. Brown had more play action targets than any other receiver last year in the NFL. 43% of his targets, 43% of A.J. Brown's targets came on play action last year. So they're going to put Burks right into that role. Like, will he be able to handle it? We don't know. Like, he definitely has some rawness to his game that he's going to have to work through. I even saw that Greg Cosell had, I saw a tweet earlier today that his comp was A.J. Brown. I think the first comp I gave you, like back in February, when people were talking about Debo, I was like, no, it's A.J. Brown. Like, that's who I thought. Now, but I've seen other people say, no, that's not a good comp. Whatever, I saw certain traits. They're not the exact same player, but I saw similar traits. A.J. Brown was definitely he was a more polished overall route runner that we had seen do more. But remember, I mean, A.J. Brown played inside too, a lot in college. So the big knock on Treylon Burks, 20% of his targets coming at or behind the line of scrimmage. But if they're going to design that kind of stuff and get it to him, which they didn't do a ton of that, for A.J. Brown. But I like the idea of getting him on play action, getting the ball in his hands, giving him space in front of him. Like, I think that's the best you could have asked for is a scheme like that for Burks. And he gets the best quarterback out of all these. So Dynasty, he won't rank number one, but I think for redraft this year, I would rank him number one right now.
He's at a minimum a top 2 wide receiver in his own offense, which you would like to think if you're taking the guy in the first round, that will be the case. Not guaranteed, though, for Jahan Dotson. Not guaranteed for Chris Olave will be a top 2 wide receiver. I guess we'll see if Alvin Kamara is going to be getting the same sort of target share with Jameson under center. But the other guy, Dwayne, that we got to at least question it is with Garrett Wilson and the New York Jets. This is a crowded passing game. This is not like the Falcons, not like one of these teams that just had nothing at wide receiver. Now, I'm not saying that Garrett's going to be on the bench. I think that's going to be all-pro returner Braxton Berrios, obviously taking that seat. With that said, though, we have Zach Wilson at quarterback, who did not show us anything last year to make us think that he can enable one, even let alone 2 high-end fantasy wide receivers. And then we also got to worry about Elijah Moore and Corey Davis. I think a lot of people, yourself included, would have considered Elijah Moore the number 1 wide receiver in this class if he would have been coming out in 2022. So from that sort of, standpoint, we're looking at Garrett Wilson as the number 2 wide receiver in an offense that has a number 3 that's plenty involved. Like, we could at least see a situation, I'll throw, last year's Dallas Cowboys team, for example, like Corey Davis could be a Michael Gallup type player in terms of target share he's getting. And then just with the overall situation, man, Garrett, 183 pounds. Like, if you do talk to draft experts who have concerns, it's maybe his physicality. And is he nuanced quite enough as a route runner? Wouldn't be shocked if maybe the best years of Garrett Wilson happen 2-3 years down the line. Is Garrett Wilson someone we want to be going after, Dwayne? Because right now in the Jets offense, I don't really see anyone I want to be just really trying to nail in at the prices they're going to be at.
Yeah, I don't think Garrett Wilson will go in the first 10 rounds. Like, I think he'll be a 10th round pick. I think he'll be a 10th or 11th once this all settles out. Like, because he was already sitting 8th and 9th. This is going to move him down because people don't believe in Zach Wilson. We know it's an offense that actually, is based off the 49ers offense. They would like to run the ball more. They're not projected to win very many games, so they're going to be in trailing scripts. But either way, it's like, if they become a better team and they start winning, guess what? They're probably going to be running the ball more. And they've made moves this offseason. They've added the 2 tight ends so they can run more of the big personnel stuff. So I think there's a lot of questions with Wilson. Like, he's my number 1. He was ranked as my number 1 prospect. Receiver coming in. Yeah. But I mean, for 2022, he's still going to be my number 1 for Dynasty. But for 20, well, I say that, like, I got to run it all, but I mean, it's going to be close. But as far as for 2022, like, I'm less excited because there's so many things that have to happen, right? Wilson has to take a step forward. He has to make sure he locks in the number 2 role. They still have Corey Davis there because if they're using 12 personnel and 21 personnel, and they're not always in 11, well, then that could mean he could be off the field when they're in 2 wide receivers, right? Or maybe they do run 3 wide. But now you're talking about, okay, Zach Wilson has to get better. He has to win a top 2 role, or they have to run more 11 personnel, and you got to keep Braxton Berrios off the field. And then you got to think about, just the fact that, okay, what if they are better and they somehow the Jets take this leap that we're not expecting? Are they really going to keep passing it all the time? Like, if all these guys are good, they're probably going to pull back, and it's going to be like the 49ers. So I feel like there are ceilings like all over the place that like he's just going to be bumping into, even if he kind of starts to get on a roll. So I want exposure to Garrett Wilson because I like him. He's a really good player. But I think you hit it nail on the head, right? Like probably a guy we're more excited about in 2 or 3 years from now. Of course, we need Wilson to cooperate. But for this year, a guy that I'm definitely not taking inside the top 10 rounds.
Garrett Wilson or Christian Kirk?
I'm still just I'll take a swing on Garrett Wilson. I'm not a big believer in Christian Kirk, but I mean, it's close. You're
Garrett Wilson or Brandon Ayuk?
Brandon Ayuk.
Garrett Wilson or Michael Gallup with a healthy knee?
Probably Gallup.
Garrett Wilson or Lockett?
Lockett.
Okay, Garrett Wilson, a little bit down from Drake London, fair to say, and probably Treylon Burks at this point. I know, Dwayne, we're doing this an hour after the draft ended. I'm not holding you to your word for the rest of the time.
I feel good about what we'll evolve, but I feel
it's looking like Garrett's wide receiver 3 in redraft.
Yeah. Because Jameson, you're still dealing with the injury.
We'll get to that.
So
we'll get to that in a minute. The next Ohio State Buckeye, 11th overall pick, New Orleans Saints selected Chris Olave. Should now be him and Michael Thomas in 2 wide receiver sets. In terms of available targets, not that many, just 15% of their wide receiver 2021 opportunities all available. That ranks 19th in the NFL. But in terms of the depth chart, Michael Thomas, he's number 1. He's out there. He's played only 7 games since 2000. Other than that, Traquan Smith, Deontay Hardy, Marquez Callaway, no one that's going to keep Olave off the field after the Saints traded up to acquire his services. Here's the question, though, Dwayne. We have Jameis Winston there. I love Jameis. You love Jameis. All the listeners, I hope, love Jameis because even when he's bad, the guy is entertaining as hell. Who knows what he's going to do next, especially the workouts. My God, like just one entertaining shit after another. But the Saints did not want to see that Jameis last year. The Saints ranked dead last in situation-neutral pass play rate in weeks 1 through 7 when Jameis was their quarterback. This was not 2019. I'm going to throw the ball 60 times, even if 6 of them get caught by the defense. Bruce Arians, Jameis. This was not that guy, pal. So, Dwayne, with that version of Jameis, maybe it is a situation like Philly where, adding this sort of firepower will coerce the coaching staff to throw the ball more than it did last year in a lesser offense. But even then, man, it seems like a leap of faith to expect them to go from literally one of the most run-heavy offenses to anything more than average, a little bit below average. And with that said, Olave is definitely going to be a number 2, you would think, behind Michael Thomas. 96 million reasons, I believe, to feature Thomas. We also got to worry about Kamara. For me, Olave, probably a better real-life draft pick than someone we should be getting overly excited about in fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, he and Wilson are tough. Like, they're right there together. Like, I think they both battle the same things. Like, Winston, we're not super excited about. You just mentioned it. They're going to be a conservative offense if they can, I believe. Like, there's potential, right, that they could kind of unleash. I would say that if for some reason Michael Thomas isn't healthy, I mean, we haven't seen him on a football field in like a year and a half.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if there are issues with Thomas's, health, that would definitely lead to Olave moving up, right? So I would go ahead and rank him. I'm probably going to go ahead and rank him ahead of Garrett Wilson just because, like, I know that could happen, right? That's in the cards. So I feel like there's probably a few less obstacles that he has to overcome versus Garrett Wilson, despite the fact that I like Garrett Wilson better as, just the player. But this is for 2022. If I'm in Dynasty, I'm still sticking with Garrett Wilson over Olave.
Still Garrett over Olave Dynasty. I mean, we do need to give Olave some credence in terms of being the most pro-ready wide receiver to come out. I remember last year we gave Mac Jones that treatment before the draft, and then he played like the best rookie quarterback for really the entire season, and we all kind of acted shocked, and it was like, oh my gosh, should he have gone first overall? Look how much better he is than these guys, when this was a narrative we were spinning the whole time. So, yeah, even though, Dwayne, at first instinct, I wanted to rank Garrett ahead of Olave, probably more so because I've been ranking Garrett ahead of Olave for the last, 2-3 months talking about this. But for 2022 only, it's one competition with Michael Thomas, and it's not like the Jets are just throwing the ball at this completely out of this world rate, compared to the Saints. So Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, would you say it's 2A, 2B, 2C with Jameson and maybe London and Burks kind of in that tier 1 for redraft?
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, right now. I do think it's probably, I'm probably going Burks, then London, then Olave, then Wilson. But to your point, Burks and London in a tier kind of together if we're just talking the rookies, right? Wilson and Olave in a tier, but Olave slightly ahead just because of the outs that he has. Go back to that real quick, like just so like folks like that are looking on YouTube and those of you that are just listening on the pod, like go check out like the our skill position tracker on the fantasy side. Like we put together some really cool visuals for you guys. We take the rookie profiles, that we had already been working on, that Ian and I have covered on the show, where we look at all the stuff like draft capital, their age, their dominator, career yards per route run, explosive targets, all that stuff. But now we've added in really their opportunity profile. But it's just look at it to the right, Ian. It's like, so what we put in, the highest teammate ADP. And so with Drake London at receiver, the highest teammate is 219. That's
Auden, man. That's Auden Tate. Put his name on there. Show some respect.
I should have just like wrote his name in.
Just wrote Auden Tate and then did bright blue.
But I did go over to the Titans. I went over to my ADP tab that this is pulling from, and I went ahead and wrote over AJ Brown. Like I changed that Tennessee to Philly. So Robert Woods is who you're seeing there at 122. So London, Burks, they both have the lowest, ADP as far as a teammate right now. Those will both obviously change. But then also when the big thing, like it's just looking at the quarterback ADPs to the right. That's the killer. Like the quarterbacks that these guys landed with, the ADPs are 30, 22, 25, 29, and 26. And 26 is for Dotson. Sorry, people are listening. They're like, we didn't know what you're talking about doing. So London is QB 30, Wilson 22, Olave 25, Jameson.
They're all bad. They're all bad.
29, Dotson 26. Treylon Burks 19. It sounds really good after you just heard the other ones.
So before we move on, Dwayne, I want to show you, man, look at my cool ass bottle opener. It's this Army guy that risks his whole life just to open up my beer. Appreciate you, Army guy. Appreciate Pacifico Brewery hooking me up
I
for this.
On Army guys in my backyard all the time still. Came and played with them all the time when he was little.
But Dwayne, I should have mentioned at the top of the show, yes, everyone, we do have our 2022 NFL Draft Tracker, fantasy football analysis for all skill position players picked live on PFF.com. Myself, Dwayne McFarland, Nathan Yonke, truly busting our collective asses to get this thing updated. We've been pre-writing stuff. We are ready to go with analysis on each and every player. We got Dwayne's handy dandy tables and more analysis. And even for, some of these guys, particularly the first round picks, we even have some one-off profiles that are even more analysis if that's what you're looking for. So yeah, Dwayne and I are going over this now, but if you're like us, you've had a couple beers already, maybe you're not remembering things the greatest right now, we got you on pff.com. Go check that out in the morning and throughout the rest of the weekend. We'll have you caught up, and believe me, we'll be back here talking about it as well. Dwayne, next wide receiver that went 3 in a row. They were in the same damn wide receiver room, same starting offense for the Ohio State Buckeyes in 2020. Unfortunately, couldn't get past Alabama. We'll cry about that again another day. The Detroit Lions selected Jameson Williams with a 12th overall pick. Similar to Chris Olave, not necessarily the most wide open offense just in terms of guys that have left, but the guys that are there, that were always there, aren't really the biggest competitions regardless. So like we got Josh Reynolds to beat out, shouldn't be much of a problem. DJ Chark got signed for $10 million. I don't think that's going to keep the number 12 overall pick on the bench. We do have Amon-Ra St. Brown, but at a minimum, Jameson Williams is going to be out there starting as he should be. The guy is a baller as soon as that knee is healthy enough to get him going. The question is, Dwayne, what can Jared Goff provide this offense? Can he enable 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers like he did with the Rams? And that is the one thing. I think, some of you Gen Zers today playing fantasy football that went around in 2018, 2019, you didn't see Goff do great things. And yeah, okay, maybe it was all Sean McVay, but Jared Goff existed enough in that moment between McVay figuring out what he wanted to do and then telling Jared for him to allow his wide receivers to put up some big numbers. 2017, wide receiver 25, wide receiver 32 PPR finishes for his top 2 guys. 2 top 13 finishes in 2018, 2 top 14 finishes in 2019, 2 top 26 finishes in 2020. Even last year, Amon-Ra finished as the wide receiver 21. So, Dwayne, I don't think we need to be terrified about Amon-Ra and, Jameson having enough targets to go around because, yeah, we got Swift and Hockenson there, but the Lions are still going to be bad, and we know Jared Goff is going to be slinging it around. I know the Garoppolo-esque ADOT isn't going to help, the deep ball and all that, but out of all these bad quarterbacks, I'm a little more confident in Goff, like being bad but still helping his wide receivers be good in fantasy.
I agree because we've seen it. We've seen it. I have less confident, in the play calling than what we got with Sean McVay.
Fair.
With the Lions and Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson. Everybody got to know generic Ben
Shout
Johnson. So it's a situation where with Williams, look, man, like the profile, like he's just an electric receiver. Like, and if you watched him, like anybody that's watched him, you can see it. And it's not, I think people early on in the process just thought Jameson Williams was this deep threat. But then you start seeing him catch slants and all these other things and just run away from these guys so easily in the SEC. Just a very talented receiver, 29% explosive target rate over his career. So those are receptions of 15 yards or more. And I mean, 2.51 yards per route run. I mean, he's just still a young guy, only 21.4. I mean, people just, didn't quite know about him early in the process because, they just thought, well, he was stuck at Ohio State. He couldn't get on the field. We're not going to pay any attention. But then once they turned on the film, start looking at the underlying metrics, and now you see the draft capital to back it up. Like, I agree. Like, if Williams was healthy, man, if we knew he was fully healthy, he would rank third for 2022. Don't you think? Like, I would still
third,
have
but
London
I think it'd be the same tier.
Burks.
Yeah, I think London and Burks would still be a tier ahead.
I agree. But then I think Williams would be probably in his own tier. And then you'd be Garrett Wilson, Olave after that.
Maybe, man. This one's going to be tough.
We've at least seen Goff do it. I know we've seen. I mean, you could argue we have seen Jameis do it too. I don't think there's any way they want to let Jameis just open it up. In New Orleans, it's always in the range of outcomes. Like, it's possible, but I think they're really they want to play defense. Like the Lions, they can't play defense. I mean, theoretically, they could be getting better. But they're still a good ways off. So Lions, if they want to be competitive, they're going to have to play offense.
Jameson Williams should be in that similar wide receiver 3 range. What are we doing with Amon-Ra St. Brown? We knew this was a possibility. We made it through free agency. I think in a great shape. DJ Chark is someone that did not worry us. Clearly didn't really worry the Lions either for them to use the 12th overall pick on Jameson Williams. We saw what Amon-Ra did, down the stretch last year. I have our PFF finishes tab open. I mean, final 6 weeks of the season, wide receiver 6, 26, 6, 6, 2, and 9. We all know Hockenson, Swift were banged up during that stretch. But Jameson Williams could now come in and be the number 1 wide receiver in this offense from day one. I get it. Amon-Ra, he's got the friendly confines of the slot. He's still going to be starting. Jameson isn't taking his job or anything like that. But Dwayne, this is steep draft capital. It would have been a lot easier to swallow this pill if it had come, in the second or third round, perhaps. Overall thoughts on Amon-Ra? Is he someone that we're going to end up kind of ranking just right next to Jameson? Because right now, man, I think it's going to be tough to treat him as a top 24 receiver still.
Well, he won't be a top 24 now, but the beauty is he's going to fall in ADP. I mean, we talked about, look, even if they take a guy in the first round, if you really think Amon-Ra St. Brown is good, then he's still going to be good. I mean, the guy came out and demanded a 30% target share every game over this period. You have to be a good player to do that. So the way I look at Amon-Ra St. Brown is, we talked about pre-draft. Look, he's a guy that, fine, when you get him, but don't push for it, because this was a strong possibility because of the draft capital that the Lions had, and that this is probably going to push him down. He's going to fall a round or two as well. He may not fall as far as some of these other guys just because people are going to be worried about Jameson Williams' injury, right? And so we'll have to see really where he falls, but I'm still going to have him in my top 36. And I think he still gives you wide receiver 1 upside. If he's just a badass, he's a badass. There's nothing you can do about it. He does get to play in the slot. That was, also Jared Goff's favorite, with Cooper Kupp.
Yep.
That wide receiver 4 finish that you talked about, that I think was in that 3rd season that you mentioned for Goff, that was Cooper Kupp. So I still feel good about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think the guy that could really be hurting here is TJ Hockenson. Hockenson has never fully taken that step forward and become like that 22, 23, 24% targets per route guy. Now, he still could. Tight ends take a little longer, but most of the guys, like when you look back at Kelsey, you look back at Gronk, you look back at Darren Waller, and now he was older, but still early in his career, they were already hitting thresholds, targets per route run, that we still haven't seen Hockenson get to. Really, Hockenson, what you're hoping for is, can he turn into Zach Ertz? That's really, and now Ertz had a couple of really good seasons, so that's nothing against, Zach Ertz, but everything kind of broke right for Ertz as well, where, he wasn't ever really an elite guy, but he was still on an offense that really decided, look, we're just going to make it work, and we're going to really funnel, as much of the offense, as we can to you. And so I'm more worried about Hockenson, to be honest, than I am Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I would take Dalton Schultz, Gronk, Kittle, Waller, Kelsey, Andrews, definitely over Hockenson, maybe even some other guys. I think Hockenson, man, he's probably closer to Dawson Knox territory now, wouldn't you say?
Well, he's still better than Knox. He's still his targets per route run, he's still been up towards 20%.
He's better for sure, but I'm just saying fantasy ranking wise, he's going down into that tier.
But once I get to this range, the way I rank my guys is more on talent.
Yeah.
So, like once I get lower, because I'm still looking for the upside, and I know to uncork the big upside, like you need to have the talent. So I think the guys you just named him with, that's still his tier. But Hockenson, I was
Sliding
already
him
a guy
down.
that I was just, man, I was already kind of fading him because I wanted Kyler, I wanted Lamar Jackson. There were these other players I wanted that were going in that range, especially over in the FFPC best balls. And so now the way I look at it, I'm even going to be less likely to take TJ Hockenson than I was before. And I wasn't taking him before. So I'm probably going to have really low exposure to TJ Hockenson. I mean, and you and I have talked about it. A lot of it's just ADP, like where he's going. We feel just as good about taking Gronk, 4 rounds later. And once Gronk signs, you'll probably still be getting him 2 rounds, maybe 2 rounds or a round later than Hockenson. So it's just going to be hard to want to go after Hockenson when you don't think the upside might be there like we thought was maybe the case last year. I just don't see it.
Amon-Ra St. Brown or the Broncos wide receivers, Judy, Cortland Sutton?
Amon-Ra.
Wow. Amon-Ra or Allen Robinson?
Amon-Ra.
Damn, like we're still talking top 30 potentially. You really aren't sliding him much, Dwayne.
Well, dude, I mean, he came out and he hit the magic number over on the PFF rookie receiving
Okay.
grade. Like,
no, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. I like it.
Again, like as I get into these other tiers, like down here, I bet more on the talent than the situation. You're going to have to be picking between those two things a lot of times. And it's not to say that the situation doesn't ever matter, because it does. Like we do the freaking utilization report. Of course, the damn situation matters, but he just flashed something so big early. Like I still feel like he could finish as a top 12 receiver.
Okay. Now,
I think it's in his range of outcomes.
We've been talking about these guys, listing them out and showing a ton of disrespect to one guy. Haven't even said his name yet. Jahan Dotson to the Washington Commanders at pick 16. Not someone that we were out on, but maybe not as someone that we expected to be a top 16 overall pick. Not the best spot to go to. Already had Terry McLaurin there as the wide receiver 1, expecting Carson Wentz to enable multiple fantasy relevant wide receivers. Has been wishful thinking over the years. I understand, the Colts offense that was going through Jonathan Taylor, those Eagles offenses, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert were really working as the de facto top pass game options. But man, Dwayne, we know Terry McLaurin's getting that. We know J.D. McKissick is going to be just taking way too many targets from everyone involved in this offense, as all Antonio Gibson managers can attest to. And I mean, hell, like he should be the starting slot wide receiver. I would imagine it's going to be Terry McLaurin on one side, Curtis Samuel on the other, and Dotson in the slot. You don't pick the guy 16th overall, sit him on the bench. I have no idea where his fantasy ceiling is coming from, though, here, and I'm not sure that it's even worth a top 50 pick to find out.
Yeah, I think this hurts Curtis Samuel, to me. Like
it does a lot. We know
what McLaurin's going to do. He's a baller. Like he's going to do his thing, right? So for me, like I'm still going to rank. Jahan Dotson. With the 16th pick, he had the fourth best dominator of the class, one of the top ones. So the top one was 46% to Khalil Shakir. Treylon Burks at 45%, but then you get David Bell at 44%, you get Jahan Dotson at 33%. Broke out pretty young, 20 and a half years. So gets the capital like we talked about. So, I'm going to put him in the same tier. Like, once Garrett Wilson, and Olave are gone, like I'm going to be fine taking Dotson. We'll see where his ADP goes. I'm still going to want exposure to him. I think he belongs, right in that range. We like those other prospects better. But I could see a path where he's the number 2 target for Washington. And to your point, like we don't love Carson Wentz, but they've been fairly pass heavy, over these early years with Rivera and Scott Turner. So we could see them continue to rely on the passing game. And if they do that, like I could see a path where he's the number 2 receiver on the team this year. You're still going to have to deal with Logan Thomas, still going to deal with Curtis Samuel. It could also very easily be Terry McLaurin's like the main guy, and then all the other 3 are just kind of like, drowning each other out. Like that's a total possibility. That sounds like a Carson Wentz offense, doesn't it?
It's basically what the Colts were last year, man.
It was
just being there. So how about, all right, Dotson or Tyler Boyd?
Boyd.
Dotson or
God, Boyd is so underrated this year.
Dotson or Marquez Valdes-Scantling?
I'm gonna give Dotson a shot. Like Valdes-Scantling, just they're close, but Scantling is just he's already had Aaron Rodgers and he couldn't do it when they needed him to be the wide receiver too.
No,
And
that's
now we
fair.
all think Mahomes going to fix it. I don't know. Now he will get more pass volume. Like the Chiefs throw the ball more than the Packers. So
Dotson or Chase Claypool?
Claypool.
Yeah. Okay. He's a little bit lower than I don't think he's going to be in that Garrett Olave tier. I think he might be in the next one. Maybe not more than 5-6 wide receivers.
Yeah, maybe you put him down where you're going to end up with like Rondell Moore.
Yeah.
Honestly, Curtis Samuel will probably be close to the same tier with him. So yeah.
All right. We talked about him a bit already, so we don't need to spend that much time on him. But Tennessee Titans pick number 18, wide receiver Treylon Burks managed to, get their AJB replacement right away. I mean, is this the end of Tannehill, man? Like, you didn't need to make this move for AJ Brown. You didn't need to make this trade right now. I don't think this makes them a better football team for 2022, obviously. For fantasy purposes, fantastic with Treylon Burks. I know that's what we're here to talk about, but just a perplexing decision, from that standpoint for me, Dwayne. But at least, we'll keep the fantasy caps on here. With Treylon, he should be the number one wide receiver. And he's really, out of all these guys, I think probably the best chance to be a number one pass game option. Even Drake London, you could argue him versus Kyle Pitts. Like, I think that's more competition than Treylon Burks has with Robert Woods there. So even if the raw targets, because of the Titans run first offense, it could be pretty similar between Burks, London, perhaps Olave and Williams. Target share, air yard share wise, the guy that should be getting designed the most cool shit by their offense should be Treylon Burks.
Yeah, we're on the same page with this one. When I look at Burks, it's like Woods doesn't worry me that much because he's never eclipsed 22% targets per route run. And that's not saying he's not good, but he's a complementary receiver. Like, and he's a really good complementary receiver. They may get him involved in the running game a little more, like what the Rams used to do. Like, there's a lot of good things about Robert Woods' game. So I'm not trying to knock him, but he's not going to be a 30% guy. Like, it's just, It's not in his wheelhouse. It would have happened by now. So that means there's still plenty of targets available, even though it is a run-centric, offense. But you can get a lot of efficiency out of it, which is nice for a player like Burks that, to your point, should be getting the design stuff. Now, he's still going to have to do his part, I like Treylon Burks. I'm very much on board with him. But people are right. Like, there's some flaws. And, like, if you go watch some of his routes, like, there's some ugly stuff. There's some ugly stuff out there. But, like, he is an athlete. He can do stuff with the ball in his hand. So it's like, I'm gonna buy into that, Ian. It's like, he's got the best quarterback. I like the scheme fit that he has. I'm gonna buy into him, working. And we see these guys progress, right? A lot of times they don't get the greatest coaching in college. We don't know all the reasons that these things happen. And so I'm gonna buy in, to the fact that for 2022, I love the landing spot. It's still an early first round pick. We've seen the athleticism. He's got the better quarterback. So I think you just lean into these guys, like with him in London. But I give him the higher ceiling than London this year.
Treylon Burks or the Broncos wide receivers, Judy and Sutton.
That's it. That's the range right there. But I'm going to probably take Burks.
Probably take the Broncos, but that's about the spot. Allen Robinson or Burks.
But you're hitting it because it's similar, right? We do think the Broncos, we don't think they're just going to open it up and just go crazy based on their offensive coordinators. They're going to be more around 60, 62% drop back rate.
There's more target competition in Denver, obviously.
Target competition, right? Probably be 58% drop back rate or so, something like that. What do we have it projected for? We have this shit projected. Like me, you, and Nathan actually
55%. 55%.
Yeah, so we got them at 55%, and then we've got where do we have the Broncos at? I have that. I would have to look that one up. We've got the Broncos.
Not going to be substantially higher, I would guess.
Yeah, it's a little bit. We've got them Broncos at 62. So it's a 7%. Right, so they're but still, to your point, less target competition, but so a little more passing for the Broncos, but more competition, less passing for the Titans, but less. So it's like that.
You got better quarterback. That's why they're together. Yeah, they're together. Okay.
Yeah.
I will live with that. Finally, let's close things out with a quick look at Kenny Pickett. And I mean quick because, Dwayne, we've talked about these quarterbacks. He was the one in the fake slide. That was athletic as hell. I'm not trying to say he's a statue by any stretch, but if you just look at Kenny Pickett's rushing catalog as a whole, he wasn't used as a design rusher. And I'm not expecting him to all of a sudden unlock that at the NFL level. We are not talking about Josh Allen here. Should be the week one starter. You would think only Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph are going to be the competition. Trubisky's 2-year, $14 million contract only includes $5 million guaranteed. perfectly reasonable backup money for a team that is seemingly trying to continue to compete in the post Big Ben era. So with Pickett, Dwayne, the comps, I mean, not the comps, but like the fantasy guys that I think he's in the range of: Matt Ryan, Marcus Mariota, Carson Wentz. But honestly, like, I would kind of rather pick all of those guys ahead of Pickett. He seems like someone that, you know, in rookie drafts, this is great. We got the Steelers landing spot, a place that I think a lot of people were hoping Malik Willis would end out, you know, end up getting a good organization, having Deontay, Claypool, Najee, Freiermuth. You got some weapons around there. It's a good spot for Pickett. Maybe he, you know, exceeds expectations. I'm not out on him as a real life quarterback, but it's just my same takeaway really as Mac Jones to Patriots last year. Even if he is good in real life, I just don't think we're getting much of anything in fantasy.
Yeah, I don't either. And look, you're not going to have to draft him. He's probably not going to be drafted. He will be in best ball some, but for the most part,
he'll
like
be 3 in best ball. Like on your team, it'll be your third quarterback.
Right. Like in redraft, he's a waiver wire. If he comes out and surprises, he's a waiver wire pickup. Like, and if he surprises you in week 1, he's definitely a guy you want to pay attention to because we know he has the weapons. But he would definitely have to come out and do something like that because he's not going to demand the capital in your redraft.
Yeah, I think that's about all we need to talk about with Kenny Pickett. Dwayne, look at us. Post-night draft, got a lot done, under an hour. Thank you all for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow night breaking down rounds 2, rounds 3 of the NFL draft, going through each and every skill position player once again. And once again, wanted to just say you can find all this information in written form over at pff.com. Again, have fantasy football analysis for all skill position players picked. Myself, Dwayne, and the GOAT, Nathan Yonke, making that happen. Dwayne, anything else you want to get off your chest?
No, man. It's funny. Like, I was so excited for all the trades and everything, but trying to keep up with it all. It's like tomorrow night, it's like, do we want them just like to bring us all the smoke again, like and go nuts with all the trades, or do we want to actually be able to try to keep up with it all? Actually, I think we did a really good job. So no, I'm excited. Still quite a few names that we didn't see go off in the first round. You got Pickens available, Sky Moore, you know, Austin Gale's favorite from PFF. We've got Breece Hall still sitting on the board, Kenneth Walker, KW3 still sitting there. Christian Watson. There's still a lot of names. So, I mean, I think early second round, mid second round tomorrow is going to be a lot of fun. Running backs, everything is unknown right now. No running backs in the first round.
As always, not as always, but for all 3 days of this NFL draft, I invite you all to use code DRAFT50 to get 50% off a PFF Elite annual subscription. If you appreciate us as your fantasy provider, gambling provider, you just like the content, want to be a smarter football fan, this is the time to act. Again, Draft 50 gets you 50% off the PFF Elite in the annual subscription. That's the best offer we're going to have all season. So support the podcast. Again, code DRAFT50 for 50% off of PFF Elite annual subscription. Thank you, everyone, once again for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow night. For Dwayne, I'm Ian. It's been the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. And until next time, take care, everybody.